The most expensive heist in history. They didn't steal money, they stole an invention that changed the world. Instead of a bank, the patent office. Instead of a gun, highly questionable circumstances. But this story has a twist that only surfaced in the 21st century. In 2002, the US Congress passed a resolution that turned everything upside down. February 14th, 1876, Valentine's Day. While lovers were giving flowers, in the modest building of the US Patent Office, a drama was unfolding more intriguing than any Hollywood thriller. Two men, two geniuses, working on the same incredible idea, filed applications for a device that was supposed to transmit the human voice through wires. Alexander Bell versus Elisha Gray. There were only 2 hours difference between their applications, but those 120 minutes determined whom we know as the inventor of the telephone and whom history forgot forever. It seemed like a fair race, but this drama began long before the applications were filed. 1860, Staten Island, New York. Poor Italian immigrant Antonio Mucci works as a candle maker, but his heart breaks every day. His beloved wife Esther is seriously ill with arthritis and cannot get up from the first floor of their house. Mucci's workshop is on the second floor, and when his wife feels bad, she has to scream at the top of her lungs for him to hear her. This pain made Mucci create a miracle, a device he called teletrafono, distant voice. A simple system of wires allowed Esther to speak with her husband while they were in different rooms. Neighbors considered it witchcraft. A voice from wires in 1860, absolute magic. Mucci understood that he had invented something revolutionary that could change the world. In 1871, he filed a caveat, a document that reserved the idea for him but didn't give him a full patent. For a full patent, he needed to pay $250, but the family didn't have that kind of money. For comparison, that's approximately $6,000 in today's money. It was precisely this sum that stood between Antonio and a place in history textbooks. Mucci tried to find investors, carried his invention to offices, but who would believe an Italian with broken English? In 1874, his application expired. He simply didn't have the money to renew it. And it was precisely at this moment that the road opened for other inventors. Alexander Bell, a Scotsman who moved to America in search of a better life. But he wasn't just a lone inventor in a garage. Bell worked with deaf people, taught them to speak, and every day saw their suffering from the inability to fully communicate with the world. His own mother was deaf, his wife too. Can you imagine what it's like to live in a family where silence was everyday life? Bell literally physically felt what it meant to be isolated from the sounds of the world. It's important to note, Bell truly worked on sound transmission independently of other inventors. His research in acoustics and work with deaf people gave him a deep understanding of the nature of sound. In 1874, fate brought him together with Boston lawyer Gardner Hubbard, a wealthy man who believed in Bell's idea and gave him money for experiments. Incidentally, Hubbard later became his father-in-law, a classic successful startup story where the investor becomes a relative. Bell hired young electrician Thomas Watson as his assistant. June 2nd, 1875, an event occurred that changed everything. During another experiment with the harmonic telegraph, Bell suddenly heard something strange from the telegraph receiver, a weak echo, but it wasn't an ordinary signal. It was sound. At that moment, Bell realized, if you can transmit one sound, why can't you transmit the human voice? And at the same time in Chicago, another genius was struggling with the same problem, Elisha Gray, an American with excellent education who received a degree from Oberlin College. Gray was a methodical researcher, a true scientist with an analytical mind. In December 1874, he had already created a multiplex telegraph that could transmit several signals simultaneously through one wire. To demonstrate his invention, Gray used violin strings. Different signals made different string sound, and melodies were transmitted through the wires. Can you imagine what impression this made on viewers? Music from wires. At that time, it seemed like pure magic. Gray understood, if you can transmit music, you can transmit speech too. February 11th, 1876, 3 days before the fateful date, Gray made a sketch of a liquid transmitter. This is the only image of telephone construction that was made before February 14th. His invention was technically superior to Bell's development, but Gray had one character trait that ultimately let him down. He was a perfectionist. Like a true scientist, he wanted to bring the invention to perfect condition before announcing it to the world. Sound familiar? How many startups failed precisely because of this? Founders spent years perfecting the product while competitors captured the market. And now imagine, Gray filed the application a day earlier. We wouldn't know Bell's name. Perhaps in your pocket right now would lie not an iPhone, but a Gray phone. But history decided otherwise. And then comes February 14, 1876, the day that would go down in history. In the morning, 2 applications arrived at the U.S. Patent Office in Washington for a device to transmit sound through wires. Bell's application was filed by his lawyer under the modest title, The Improvements in Telegraphy. Gray's application by a lawyer for a liquid transmitter. The time difference, only 2 hours. 2 hours that determined the fate of 2 geniuses and the entire telecommunications industry. Both applications went to one official, Zenas Fisk Wilbur. February 19th, Wilbur wrote to Bell's lawyer that the application was too similar to Gray's construction and might be rejected. But already February 24th, the decision suddenly changed. Priority was recognized for Bell. What happened during those 5 days? What secret negotiations were conducted in the corridors of the Patent Office? And only 10 years later, in 1886, dying under oath, Zenas Wilbur revealed a version of events that shocked America. He confessed that he was an alcoholic, that he had served with Bell's lawyer in the same regiment during the Civil War and constantly borrowed money from him. Moreover, he claimed that he received money from Bell and showed him Gray's application. However, these accusations were never definitively proven in court, and the testimony of a dying man raised questions among historians. But Wilbur knew another secret. In the same patent office were stored Antonio Meucci's materials, drawings, descriptions, evidence that the telephone was invented back in 1860. But most mysteriously, according to some data, Meucci's materials disappeared from the archive. The exact circumstances of this are still unclear. It could have been either malicious intent or ordinary confusion in 19th century archives. Who would pay attention to a poor Italian's documents when millions were at stake? Despite all suspicions, March 7, 1876, Bell received patent number 174,465. This patent would later be called the most expensive patent in history. And March 10th, words were spoken that changed the world. "Mr. Watson, come here, I want to see you." Simple, ordinary words. But they meant the beginning of a new era. For the first time in human history, one person's voice was heard by another at a distance. Gray didn't accept defeat. He understood that he had been treated unfairly and began to fight. Thus began a patent war that lasted 17 years. Bell, having means and support, withstood 600 lawsuits and in 1893 won the final victory in the U.S. Supreme Court. He became world famous, founded a company that turned into the giant AT&T, and Gray remained in the shadow of history despite 70 other patents. History is cruel to latecomers. Meucci died in 1889 in poverty. His wife Esther sold all his inventions for a pittance, just to somehow make ends meet. Justice triumphed only in the 21st century. In 2002, 126 years later, the U.S. Congress passed Resolution number 269. It was officially recognized. The life and achievements of Antonio Meucci should be recognized, and his work in inventing the telephone should be acknowledged. But for Antonio Meucci himself, this recognition came too late. He passed away in poverty, never knowing that one day the world would call him the true father of the telephone. But a congressional resolution is not a patent. It doesn't change legal rights, doesn't redistribute profits. It's simply recognition of historical truth. Bell remains the official inventor of the telephone, AT&T, his successor, and Meucci's name is known only to historians. Modern historians of technology believe that all three, Meucci, Bell, and Gray, made important contributions to creating the telephone. Perhaps it would be fairer to speak not of one inventor, but of the gradual evolution of an idea. History is full of such mysterious patent cases, and we continue to investigate them. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss new episodes. And we also have a Telegram channel where we publish additional facts and stories that didn't make it into the video. Link in the description.